guys, this is Cycle 1, Week 16, and in community this week we are going to be continuing our study of great artists from the Renaissance period. And this week you will get to introduce them to Art Durer. So for the sake of this video, I am just going to be going over some of the information about his lifetime and the works that he created and sort of his legacy in the art world. And then we are going to be diving into a brief step-by-step tutorial of the activity you're going to get to do with your students, which should hopefully help troubleshoot any kind of challenges you would come up against. It's a little more involved this week, and so I want to make sure that you guys are prepared, that you have all of it figured out ahead of time, and then it should be smoother and more fun for everybody. So the first thing you'll notice on your script is I created a quick review of the 3 artists we studied in weeks 13, 14, and 15, and I really want to emphasize that that is entirely optional. You do not need to do that with your students, especially those younger kiddos. I have one who's in the youngest class, and they just don't have the kind of attention span that wants to sit for a long time and go over these details, and that's perfectly fine. You do not have to do that with your class. If you have older students and you think they may have retained some facts about Giotto or about Ghiberti or Fra Angelico, then by all means you can use this as a guide and kind of highlight some of those key points that we would have talked about in class on those weeks. But because the activity this week might take up a little bit more time, it's 2 parts. You're going to start in your classroom, and then you're going to do the actual printmaking with the paint in the cafeteria. So you have to relocate them, go do that, and then come back. So if you want to leave a little extra time to get all that done and not feel rushed, then by all means feel free to not have to do the review of the artists we've studied so far. So diving into some information about our artist this week, it's Art Durer. He painted around the same time as the other artists that we've studied, but a key difference would be that so far we've looked at artists from the Italian Renaissance, and Durer was part of the Northern Renaissance movement. He was from Germany. Something that would probably be a really big takeaway for your students is that he was known for being able to do these extraordinary woodcut prints. And so he would use a soft piece of wood and his carving utensils, and he would then carve away all the parts around the picture that he wanted to remain, and that's what he would use to paint and make multiple prints. This was a really neat technique for artists to be able to use, because then they could make the same picture over and over again once you have the original woodcut finished. And understandably, it took a lot of time and detail, but then to be able to produce multiple of the same image was a really beneficial thing for them. But Durer, it's just hard to even compare him to others because he was so gifted in being able to get all those little details in there. In your orange folder, you're going to have some printouts of his artwork, so have that handy so that you can show your students and pass it around and let them see just how detailed his work truly was. I'm gonna hold up just a few of these. You should have this. This is his famous rhinoceros woodcut, and I think I put it in your script, but it's kind of interesting. He was able to do this based off of an anonymous sketch and a brief description that was sent to him. He didn't see the rhino in person when he made this, and yet it became kind of the go-to idea that Europeans had of what rhinos would look like for quite a while, because you couldn't go very many places to find them in Europe. But Durer created this, and there's just some really incredible and intricate detail all throughout. This would have been a print, a woodcut. This also, I'm not sure that I have this in your folder, but this is the 4 Horsemen from his Apocalypse series. It's, heavy content, a bit graphic parts of it, but what is astonishing is when you look at it really close up, you can see these lines that he was able to get in there, and to just think of the time and patience it would take to do that with the engraving tools. And so very, very gifted. He also did self-portraits. This one should also be in your folder. This was his self-portrait when he was only 13 years old. So there too, he was a prodigy. He could do these things at such a young age. His dad was a goldsmith, and he did learn how to do the arts and do sculpting and working with metal, engraving metal at a young age. So he had exposure to that, but just his ability to execute things from such a young age is awesome. And I also have, this is something that we could tie into the activity. I'll make it optional for you guys, but he had his own unique monogram that shows up in most of his artwork. I'm not sure about the earliest things he made, but the vast majority, you would find this hidden somewhere in his artwork. Sometimes it was in a very obvious place, but other times, I'll show you this picture right here. It's down at the bottom, kind of like engraved onto a stone, but it is his monogram, an A.D. for his initials. And so I'm going to bring this to community, and you guys can show your students that too. And that's something you can incorporate into the activity by letting them create their own monogram with their initials, something unique, and then that can be a part of their print that they make as well. So just to remember about Durer, he had extraordinary attention to detail. He could create the effect of shadows in his woodcuts. Lots of fine lines and designs. He also did, I didn't even show this, he also did watercolor. This is an example of one of his watercolors, the Great Piece of Turf, and these are like a photograph. They're just so highly detailed down at the level of the ground. He did animals as well, so a wide range of subjects. He was very gifted in all ways that he would create art. So getting into the activity, what you should have in your Ziploc bag is you should have some foam pieces like these, different colors. The color isn't going to matter, just as long as everybody gets a piece of foam. You should have some pre-cut animals. Some are going to be more detailed and difficult, others are simple. This is a turtle, that might be a little bit more on the simple side. The owl, if your students choose to do this, it's going to have a lot more little details and lines that they can add, all that being optional. What we are going to make is going to look something like this. It's going to be their own sort of engraving or woodcut on the foam, and then that is going to get painted, and we're going to put that on paper, and then they're going to have their own print. So the first thing you'll do, and I'm going to have all of the paint set up for you guys in trays in the cafeteria, so don't worry about that. In your classrooms, you will not need to have a disposable tablecloth down. What they're going to need is simply the foam sheets, the animal cutouts, let them pick, and if they want to make their own and they don't want to use a animal, that's okay. They can be creative and engrave anything they want on here. And you also are going to be using dull pencils. Colored pencils are helpful if they are going to be tracing, because then they'll be able to see where they have been. Otherwise, just regular pencil is fine too. And you're going to need some tape. I'm going to bring in an extra tape in case you do not have this. I will have baby wipes as well for fingers at the paint stations. I have these, well, if you have one of these in your bins, please bring it to community, but it's a brayer. We're going to be using that for applying the paint to the foam. So once your students have their piece of foam and they have whatever artwork they're going to be tracing, whatever they decide they want to make, and some sort of dull writing utensil, this is where the tape becomes handy. I have one that I started over here. It's a penguin. So I've taped the paper to the top, and then I simply used a colored pencil to go around the edges of this, and it will rip, but that's okay, because the paper isn't the important part of this project. That is only for the sake of tracing. So you're going to have your students go around the edges if they are tracing an animal. If not, this is an example of maybe, I don't know if you can see this well, guys, I'm sorry about that, but like a monogram, if you were to try to do, this is just one of my kids' initials. And you can see that with Durer's monograms, it's kind of his letters nestled or nested into each other at times. The big A and the little D around it, that seemed to be his most common go-to one. So yeah, if they want to do that instead, let them just draw that on their foam. So they're going to trace this, and then what should be left when they're done, when you lift this up, is the engraving of that. So then they can remove the piece of paper, and this would be a great time to let them deepen those lines so they can go back over it. I'm not really too worried if these are dull. I don't think it should puncture the foam, but it may be helpful to tell them, don't try to cut through the foam. We're just trying to deepen these lines so that we get a better, crisp, clear print. So once your students have all completed this step, that's when you're going to line them up. And you should also, in your Ziploc bag, you should have some cardstock or paper that was in there. That's what each student is going to be printing on. So yes, you need to bring that with you to the printmaking stations. There's going to be 3 colors of paint, 3 different stations. So we have orange acrylic paint, blue acrylic paint, or red. And there should be moms. Please encourage moms to help out with this so that it can go along a little faster. Each student will get a turn, but I have set this up ahead of time. This is a pan like what we're going to have in the community, and I've just put some of the blue acrylic paint on there. And if I'm using the penguin that I have pre-traced, and then I have my piece of cardstock. I really think we have white cardstock in your Ziploc bag. I just grabbed a piece of black cardstock. It's what I had on hand here. Then one at a time, you're going to have a mom help get this brayer in the paint. And so you'll roll it like this so that it's nice and thick on there. And I am going to have wax paper available too, and we'll lay that down as kind of a workstation. And so once that's applied to the brayer, you're going to be able to put it on your piece of foam or their piece of foam and try to cover the whole rectangle, because otherwise your print might look kind of funny. It won't have very clear-cut edges. So this is what it looks like with paint on it, and then the next step is to have their paper ready. So we're going to be doing this, just giving it a bit of firm pressure. When you put it down, you don't want to wiggle it around or move it much, because I guarantee then you will get a smudged print and a sad kiddo. So it really needs to just be kind of firm. Pressure without moving it, and then you'll carefully lift it up, and they're all going to look a little different, but you can see that I created a penguin there, and so that's kind of neat. This is our print. It is simulating the wood block prints that Durer and other artists created. We won't have time to do this in the community, but you could make multiple prints based off of what they created. And if these are wiped down or washed, they could hang on to them. Technically, I'm going to leave that up to your discretion. Each teacher can decide what they want to do. You should have name tags too for your students, the stickers that you can put on the back, and then let these dry sitting outside of your classrooms on a disposable tablecloth. That would be ideal. And then you can use baby wipes to wash their fingers, or just corral them all to the bathroom and wash their hands. So again, I'm going to give you each set of teachers will get an example in the morning so that you can show your students what we're doing. And if there's any of these pieces that you do not see in your Ziploc bag or in your bin, and it isn't one of the things that I said I'm bringing in the community, please do get in touch with me, and I will get those supplies together before we meet. But I hope you guys have fun studying Durer together in community, and that's it for this video.